A new player is entering the critical minerals race, not through mining, but through royalties. The Metals Royalty Company is listing on the Nasdaq, backed by a royalty on a deep-sea project in the Pacific Ocean run by the Metals Company. Now, that project targets polymetallic nodules, which are rock-like deposits on the ocean floor, rich in nickel, cobalt, and copper, metals used in batteries and energy systems. But deep-sea mining has never been done at commercial scale and remains highly debated. So how does a royalty model work in a sector still trying to prove itself? Well, I'm joined now by Brian Paes-Braga, Chief Executive Officer of the Metals Royalty Company. Brian, thanks very much indeed for talking to us.
Very happy to be here with you, Devin. Thank you.
Well, look, you're applying a royalty model that has worked on land for decades, right? What gives you confidence it can work in deep sea mining where there is still no commercial production? How do you get that confidence?
Sure. Well, Devin, in a royalty, it's all about size. And when we set out to build this business a few years ago, we wanted to find the biggest and the best project we could find that would allow for a royalty to be essentially the most valuable it could be. So what does that mean? When you've got a royalty payment, whatever the top line revenue is of a project, you get paid a certain percentage of that top line revenue. And when you look at the Nori project, which mining.com has profiled multiple times, it truly is the largest remaining nickel equivalent project in the world. And so when you're starting out a royalty company, for us, it was all about getting the biggest and the best. When it comes to creating the entire deep sea mining industry, like any new industry, it's difficult. Mm-hmm. I'm sure if we were chatting 50, 60, 70, 80 years ago, when oil was starting to get developed in the oceans, I'm sure there would have been concerns. I'm sure there would have been things that people didn't think about. But at the end of the day, we're in a world where the United States is all about their mineral sovereignty. And this deep sea resource is the obvious solution for the United States of America and more broadly the West, but the US being the biggest consumer of these metals to shore up their sovereignty. It's absolutely critical. And so we at the Metals Royalty Company, we set this company up essentially to have the biggest royalty we could find out of the gates, and then use this platform to go and provide capital to projects that would bring metals back to the United States of America.
Okay, your company's core asset is a 2% royalty on a deep-sea mining project, right, in the Pacific Ocean. It's been operated by TMC Metals Company. In simple terms, how does that translate into revenue for your investors?
Yeah, so the Metals Company is by far and away the leader in this industry. They have a 15-year head start pretty well on any private enterprise. So for us in doing a transaction with them, it was choosing the market leader. And the Metals Company has been very clear. They are trying to get into production by the end of next year.
Yep.
So once the company is in production, if they are successful in getting into production at the end of next year, we start getting paid. We've got a gross overriding royalty interest of 2% on the revenue generated from this field. And the great part about a royalty model is once the field is in operation, you essentially you've got a toll payment. And we have full belief in the Metals Company and the leadership team there with their capabilities to get this operation rolling.
It's interesting, you're listing in the United States at a time when governments are trying to secure supplies of metals like nickel and cobalt. How directly is your strategy aligned with that push for domestic mineral security?
Devin, it's 100% aligned. Yeah. That is precisely why we're taking this company public. And we are entering a space that we feel has a lot of white space. You mentioned in your introduction that this royalty model is a proven model in the mining space. And it's been very successful, creating many companies in the tens of billions of dollars of market cap, a couple of them over $50 billion that focused primarily on precious metals over the past 2 or 3 decades. There's a new paradigm in the United States. It's an administration, but not only an administration, it's a more educated investor base that is seeing the vulnerabilities that the United States has with regards to its supply chain of critical minerals and more broadly metals across, not just critical minerals, more broadly across the commodity, hard assets of the commodity sector. It's like 10 years ago or 15 years ago when the United States turned their attention to oil sovereignty. What happened on the back of that? The shale revolution happened and the United States became energy independent. Now we're seeing, I believe, the early days of America going out into the world, making this a priority within the administration and working with private enterprise, and where the Metals Royalty Company wants to sit as being a go-to capital partner for projects that are focused on bringing mineral sovereignty back to the United States.
Brian, I got to ask you, your model is designed to reduce operational risk by taking a royalty rather than building the mine, right? But in this case, the biggest uncertainty, as I see, it's not operational, it's regulatory and legal, with no finalized global framework yet for deep sea mining. So are you truly reducing risk for investors or simply shifting exposure to a different kind of uncertainty? How do you answer that?
You know, Devin, I've been in this business, in the mining business of developing assets, of financing assets, of starting companies for almost 2 decades. What I would share with you and your listeners is no project is easy.
Yep.
Not one. And many times in the development, even of an onshore mining project, permits are uncertain until the day you actually receive them. Then I would share with you, in some mining projects on land, it's a continued challenge. If you look at what happened in Panama with, for example, First Quantum, this was an operating mine and it lost its social license. It was absolutely horrible for investors in First Quantum. And so my point is, nothing's ever certain. It's always going to be a challenge, but what the metals company has is arguably the largest source of nickel, copper, cobalt, and manganese in the world. Yeah. And if there's an administration in the United States that wants to support that within a framework that responsibly extracts that resource, I think that the metals company will get that environmental and social license. The company's almost spent $1 billion and 15 years of work doing everything it possibly can to answer all the unknowns. The reality is, it's a new industry. I believe it's got to get started because the world needs these metals, specifically the United States. And we're hopeful that there's a resolution and a great prosperous industry that comes out of this that is responsible to the environment, that can be a great steward of an entire new industry that can generate a lot of value for shareholders, for stakeholders, for countries. It's actually a very exciting time.
Yeah. Oh, and then as we wrap up, I mean, as we approach this listing and we get listed, key milestones that you would want investors to look at here, what would that be?
I think it's just such a dynamic space, specifically, with our first asset being a royalty on the Nori concession, which is in the Pacific Ocean, as you mentioned. I think following the progress within a regulatory framework and the metals company hopefully receiving its commercial recovery permit, and then getting ready for first production. It's a very exciting time. It's a world's first. Secondly, I've spent, as I mentioned, almost 2 decades financing and building natural resource companies, specifically in the mining space. I believe that myself and our team, our investment team, will be very active in a pipeline of opportunities that will create a diversified basket of royalties, streams, and other structured equity type products within this public company that gives investors a diversified exposure to this, what I believe is this paradigm shift that's happening in the United States. And I don't think it'll be billions or tens of billions of dollars. I think it's going to end up being hundreds of billions of dollars, not unlike what's happening in AI infrastructure, not unlike what's happening or what had happened in the electric vehicle space. The metals industry is getting its moment, and the metals royalty company wants to play its part in being a solution provider, a capital solution provider for the entire industry.
Yep. Well, it does sound compelling, and we certainly would keep our eye on it. Thanks very much indeed, Brian Pesh-Braga, Chief Executive Officer of the Metals Royalty Company. Brian, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you for having me, Devin. Great to be with you.